we have many drafts and chapters that we're always updating. But I think that the specific stories we tell ourselves, the first one in midlife is, I'm too old to do that. I can't take a risk now. We've had a very successful career. We think, oh, I built this thing up, and how can I do something different now? Or I've never thought of myself as an artist or a creative, or I've never thought of myself as somebody who's really good at math or science or can figure things out or look at big picture. So we've kind of siloed ourselves in these areas where we can only really do one thing.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I am super thrilled that you are here, taking the time out of your day to spend it with me. I don't take that for granted, as I know you can be doing many things. But if this podcast and the work I do inspires you at least a little bit to really look at your life and ask yourself, who am I? What do I really want? And how do I get there? Then I will have done my job. If you enjoy this podcast, my ask is that you share it with at least one friend, because I need your help. I need your help to make my mission come true. My mission with Power Purpose Play is to empower 1 million women in midlife worldwide to live their next stage in life to the fullest, one strong woman at a time. Will you be one of them? To that end, after years of research and training and interviewing countless women, I have developed a step-by-step process of rediscovery. To fulfill this mission, I am offering this process, the independent or online learning option of my program, It's My Time Now, free of charge for you. Yes, you heard me right. I want you to live the happiest and most fulfilled next chapter of your life, so this is my gift to you. There are no strings attached to this offer. I have created this program for you, and I want as many women as possible to benefit from it. As a loyal listener of this podcast, what better way for me to fulfill this mission? All you need to do is email me at kavita@powerpurposeplay.ca. That is KAVITA @powerpurposeplay, one word, .ca. Email me with your name and why you're interested in this program, and I will send you the login details. Again, all you have to do is email me at kavita@powerpurposeplay.ca, and I will give you access to the online program, complete with eye-opening exercises, tools, and templates for you to work on at your own pace. I am so excited by our mission, and I hope you are too. I don't want there to be any potential barriers in your own personal growth, so this is why I'm doing this. I hope you take advantage of this offer and also tell your friends about it. This week's awesome guest is Liz Solar, who I had the pleasure of being on her podcast, Embark. I'm sure you will enjoy it as we discuss, among many other things, how do we embark on our life's creative journey. Enjoy, and I'll be back here at the end with the key takeaways. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I hope as you're listening to this that you're feeling energized and are stepping into your own inner power and potential. Through the course of building Power Purpose Play and through this podcast, I've had the good fortune of meeting amazing and uplifting people who have really enriched my life and who I hope have provided you with inspiration to take that twinge in your heart and do something about it. This week is no exception, as I met our next guest through connections and through our mutual interest in hearing and sharing stories. I'm sure you will be immediately drawn to Liz Solar's beautiful voice, as well as her words. Liz Solar is a Boston-based voice actor who can be heard on commercials, interactive apps, audiobooks, and corporate narrations for regional and global brands. She has produced and participated in storytelling events and produces and hosts the Embark podcast. Her mission is to share stories, both personal and universal, to promote understanding, empathy, and a little more conversation. Liz coaches reluctant speakers to communicate with more confidence, power, and grace. Her signature talks include No is Not a Four-Letter Word, and a founder and contributor to the writer's blog Acts of Revision, Liz is completing her first novel. She lives in Greater Boston with her husband and Golden Doodle studio manager, Jesse. Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast, Liz. How are you?
Oh, Kavita, very well. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. And I sent you the wrong version of my bio. Sadly, my Swami, my studio Swami, Jesse, we had to put her down.
I'm so sorry.
I know. She was a good
that's terrible. Oh.
So it was a couple of months ago, and now we're at that point where we're thinking, yeah, it might be time for another pup because
that's
I've
hard.
had one since I was a kid. Yeah,
oh, I know. I have a cockapoo puppy, and her name is Lena, and she's away right now. She's actually coming home tomorrow. My son has her in New York, but he's coming with her tomorrow, and I am so excited. It's like my child is coming home.
It's true. Well, Lena is living the life. She hanging out at Tiffany's,
yes.
polishing the tiara.
Oh, okay. Well, are you going to get in another one, or
we are?
Yeah,
we are. She was a big dog too. She was almost 70 pounds.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And now we downsized in our lives, so we're downsizing the dog too. But but not nice. A little one, because my husband will not go for walking. Something too small.
Right. Well, it's so nice too. We've met several times, and it's just nice to have a conversation for other people to kind of share with us. So, I mentioned in the introduction, Liz, that your mission is really to share stories and to promote understanding and conversation. And of course, I do the same with this podcast. And because I really believe by listening to each other's stories, we can grow and learn and become inspired, right? So I'd like to just kind of ask you, tell us about your story and what led you to do what you're doing today, and just maybe get into a little bit about your story.
There's this old bit from the Mary Tyler Moore Show where there's this very pompous newscaster, and he says it all started in a 5,000 watt radio station, which is kind of my story. I started working for CBS Radio in sales, and immediately, because I had a journalism background, became attracted to all the people who worked in programming because they smoked cigarettes and drank whiskey. And I'm like, yeah, these are my people. So I worked on the air doing various jobs. I was a public affairs director and a news director. I was a DJ, did pretty much every music format. Okay. Oh, yes.
Nice.
And did a Saturday talk show for a while as well. So I've always had that component. And then I was ceremoniously dumped for my final full-time radio gig. And I thought, okay, so what's the next move?
Mm-hmm.
And it was sort of the very beginning of home studios. The people I knew who were really savvy about audio said, you could put a studio in your house and work directly with clients. And at the time I had small children and they weren't babies anymore. So it was important that after school time where you need to be home or else all hell breaks loose.
Yes.
So I thought, well, I can work till 3:00. And when they come home, then I can be mom again. And if something comes in at night, I can work on it at night. And that is kind of how it started. And it just took off. It just kept going. So I've been doing that full time the last 15 years.
Fantastic. Yeah. So it's interesting that you said that when we go through these different transitions in life, like, even when we have young children, and it's like, you have to make a choice. Like, how do you want to spend your time? Do you want to be a full-time going into a 9 to 5 thing? Or do we want to kind of adjust our lives and have the roles that fit into that are important to us, right? So I think that's so important to do. And he did that by deciding to work from home. And I think that's a really important thing for people to realize, that you don't have to, you can do that throughout your whole life. You get to decide, right, how you want to live your life.
There are so many things that are out of our control, that the things that we can take on and say, I'm going to at least attempt this. Mm-hmm. May not be a success, but that's also part of the process too, because we do keep falling at certain points in life or throughout our lives, and our character and what we're really about, that's formed by how we react to those situations, because the other shoe is going to fall. Mm-hmm. And I like to think I'm an optimist, but there's always that little piece that is, oh, it's really good. It's 90% good, but is that shoe going to fall? Right. That's a cuckoo thing, but it's there.
It's there. It's there for sure. So just on that note, actually, you talk about stories and I talk about stories, but if we're focused on women specifically in the midlife stage of life, what are some of those stories that we tell ourselves that kind of get in the way of our own growth? We can tell, we hear stories from other people, but the stories that we tell in ourselves and our own minds get in the way. So can you describe what are some of these stories that we tell ourselves?
How much time do we have today? Yeah. I mean, we tell these stories to ourselves from birth. I mean, so much of it is what environment we were born into. What were the messages you got? Because some of those stories are old stories and they're not even helpful to us anymore. And yet we keep telling us that. And they can't be necessarily bad stories. They don't have to be bad stories. They're just stories that aren't really about us. They're about somebody's idea about what we could be or should be. So I think that we have the limitations of the stories that defined us for a long time. And then we go through, I think through all stages, we're telling ourselves stories that don't help us. And I think they only become more urgent in midlife because there's less time to really ruminate on these things. And we feel the compulsion to act. There's less time to waste. I remember somebody who told me in my 20s, you have decades to burn. Yeah. That's not necessarily the case now. And so it becomes more important to define who we are and say, okay, that's a story I told myself, and I'm a writer. You can revise that. You can revise that story. Right. It's much easier said than done, but that's why writers write every day. So every day they're writing or rewriting that story. I think it was Grace Paley many years ago who said, writing is rewriting, or yes. I rewrite because it's not so good the first time. So we have many drafts and chapters that we're always updating. But I think that the specific stories we tell ourselves, the first one in midlife is, I'm too old to do that. I can't take a risk now. We've had a very successful career. We think, I built this thing up, and how can I do something different now? Or I've never thought of myself as an artist or a creative, or I've never thought of myself as somebody who's really good at math or science or can figure things out or look at big picture. So we've kind of siloed ourselves in these areas where we can only really do one thing. And also, depending, and you don't have to have children to be a caretaker. Many of us are caretakers of somebody in our families, and we become attached, not just out of necessity, but we start to believe that if I'm not the caretaker, who am I? And that becomes a really big part of who we are. So, if I stop doing that, what's going to go wrong there? I'm going to let people down. I don't really have that. There's a certain status that comes with the caregiver as well. And you can say it's an elevated one or it's a lower status one, or it could be the martyr. And that starts to feel really comfortable if we've become accustomed to that. Or isn't that, it becomes some kind of a virtue.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that it really is, but we believe that. So we step or we start to compare. Oh, I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take me so long. So in 5 years, will that still even be relevant? But I remember being a woman, maybe in my late 30s, and I met someone who was an intern in my husband's law office, and she was 56 at the time. And I said, "Oh my goodness, that's so brave of you to go back to law school. You're this age, and by the time you get out, like, what do you think is going to happen?" And she said, "Well, I could be 56 and not going to law school."
Right.
So it's
That's
this,
amazing.
do I have a capability? Is there a vision quest? And if I don't go for it, then it's always going to be something nagging at the back of my brain. I didn't do it. And that's a regret.
Mm-hmm. Those are great. I mean, what you said is so true. These stories that you said, I'm too old. And then the roles that we put ourselves in, the caregiver roles. And those, like you said, when we're in these roles, we have a sense of comfort because we've been used to doing these things, like either whether it's taking care of our kids or, as you said, other members of our family. So that puts us in this comfort zone. And when I think as at midlife, as you mentioned, it's like, oh, I'm so used to doing this. Now I don't know how to do anything else. And then we tell ourselves these things. But at the same time, I think it's a type of person who will say, well, look, I do have that second half of my life. So what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with the rest of my life? And it's that kind of thing that I want to really instill in women, is that there is that possibility. And all these voices and all these stories that we tell ourselves, we need to slowly, one step at a time, take those away and tell ourselves different stories.
Well, and
Rewrite, like you said, rewrite the chapter or the books.
exactly. Plus, we need a tribe. We need
Absolutely.
a tribe who is behind us saying, "You got this. We're with you. We're sharing this. Your success is our success."
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're doing it, we know that there's a possibility for us. And I do think that it's really helpful to have intergenerational tribes, but it's also to have a specific tribe that is going through what you're going through. I mean, we do it through life. We do the Lamaze class if we're moms, and we have all those people who are like the first time parents having all these trepidations and excitement about being a parent. And I think that, or else it's the college experience. So you're sharing that with a tribe of people who are going through the exact same thing that you are. Am I going to get into that master's program? What do I do next? Do I decide to go for my MBA, or I really do want to be a sculptor, so I'm going to go back to school for that. So we need that tribe who's going through it at the same time, who really know what that is.
That's so important. You said that. And thanks for bringing that up, because it's so true. In any stage of our life, we need people who we can trust and who can make us accountable for our actions, and that we can share in a safe environment. Because everyone has fears, everyone has obstacles in front of them, and how do we get through them? We can do it ourselves, but it's far easier if we have people who are sharing similar obstacles, similar fears, that we can walk through it and walk through life together with, right?
Right. And we totally discount that sometimes because many of us, a lot of women, do not know how to ask. They think it's a favor and, oh my goodness, like I can't ask. They don't have time. This doesn't sound important. We really minimize our ask, when sometimes people are so relieved that you ask them to do something. They want to share their expertise, or they want to be asked an opinion. I think if you're not being an energy drain or an emotional vampire, the ask is a really good and healthy thing. And we probably should do it more often than we do.
Yeah. I did a podcast on the importance of asking for help. It's a sign of confidence. It's a sign of strength, not weakness.
Right.
Yes.
And depending on the stories that we're told,
yes,
I think women feel sometimes I'm not going to be seen as competent if I ask for help. And for a time I was working with an executive coach, and I was doing her presentation coaching. So working with her cohorts who needed some help with public speaking. And she told me that a lot of men that she knew would just either automatically have some training paid for by whichever company they worked for, or they would just go up and say, hey, I need some extra help with this. And it's going to bring a lot of value to the company. I need you to pay for this. Whereas women would not go and
Not
ask
do that.
because they felt it would reflect on something, some kind of lack within them. So
Mm-hmm.
they would go on their own, find somebody to help coach or train them in something and pay for it out of pocket.
Interesting.
And there's something so sad, but
Yeah.
I think so resonant about that.
Yes. Do you think it's changing?
I hope it's changing. I'm at a point in life where I have millennial children. They're boys, but I get to know their female counterparts. And some things have changed incredibly. And I think there is a lot more confidence about who they are. And I think that there are more opportunities presented, but in insidious ways, they still get shut out of a
Yes.
lot.
Yes. Yes. Oh,
So it's a little bit of an underbelly of things that happen in ways that women are not included in traditional boys clubs. And I love the boys. So this is no slam, but perhaps it's just more of us saying, this will not stand.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we see little glimmers of it, and let's see what the next couple of decades brings us. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go back to this whole, I talk a lot here about obstacles that are in our path and in our way, and how do we overcome them? And that's a big topic, but just from your life experience, and maybe you can share some of the obstacles that came in your way, and what, as advice for women, how did you face them? Or how are you still overcoming them? What are some of
Oh
the,
my, yeah, we're always overcoming them. I mean, there's always, for every
yeah.
solution, there's a new problem, I think.
Yeah.
We just keep manufacturing them. Something pivotal for me, I think, in my personal life was I was a very young mom. I had a 2-year-old and my first husband suddenly died. And it was a fairly traditional situation in that he took care of kind of all the manly things. He was both very creative, but also very competent at like building stuff and financial stuff and all that. And he had done it, and I had sort of abdicated those roles. And I found myself as approaching 30 and not being skilled that way, feeling like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I was working in a field that was primarily filled with both single people and certainly childless people. So I found myself really adrift. Our house had a lien on it because I wasn't paying attention to financial things and thinking someone else did, was in a pile of debt, and we had a very small amount of money relative to the time behind me
Right.
to take care of things. And there's nothing that will push you as much as adversity. I mean, it's going to kill you or it's going to reinvent you. So the first thing I thought about is, well, at some point I have to get a full-time job because I had been working part-time. And I thought, well, that is not today because I have a 2-year-old.
Right.
And we need to take care of our family situation first. And I'll give you the cliff notes because there was a lot of ups and downs and a lot of heartbreak. But I got on the phone with attorneys and the federal government, the IRS, and negotiated things and did things that I never thought I would do. One person, and I think it was more of a little bit of a passive aggressive remark, but she looked at me once and she said, I never thought you'd be this strong. And so people make up their minds about what they think. And that's part of the story too. I was kind of the creative, always late person. And it got me to kind of figure out who I wanted to be as a parent and make that a priority, how I wanted to do a work life. And as a single parent, that is not an easy thing. And for all the single parents out there and all the parents out there in particular who've gone through COVID, so much respect and love, because it's not easy to balance that thing. We think we can have it all. We think we can lean in, but not without a lot of help. Those people who are leaning in, they have a lot of support and help, and most of us don't. And that's the reality. Many of us are working just to pay for childcare.
Yes.
And that's another issue that comes up. But for me, it kind of told me what I was made of. And I had a point where I worked at this radio station, and it was my first full-time job after that. And it was the first time I kind of believed that it's very fanciful that there are angels walking among us, because there were.
Yeah.
And I had this gruff boss. He was a Vietnam vet and very tender soul, but on the outside, really gruff. And one day I walked into his office and I had an interview that day. And I was crying, and I'm like, I mean, it's like tears and snot. It's not a good look. And he has this sofa, and I'm sitting at the sofa, and he hands me a white handkerchief. I mean, that's how old school he was.
Oh.
And he sat down next to me and he said, you don't have to do anything that you don't want. You want to go home, you go. And I won't think any less of you, because you need to take care of yourself.
Wow.
And that witnessing, that giving permission was an incredible milestone for me in my professional life, but also in my personal life, because I let myself, we talk about being vulnerable. I mean, I couldn't have been any more low than I was, or lower than I was. And he saw me. And I laundered that handkerchief and gave it back to him, because that was not right.
But well, he gave you permission to be you, right?
Right. And sometimes when we think that we go in and if I fix that, it's going to be better. And sometimes people are like, no, leave me alone. I just want you to know that I'm feeling this way. And if someone can receive that, that was so huge for me, that he saw it. He said, no judgment, do what you need to do.
Yes.
And I was able to stay.
Wonderful.
And that to me was, I don't know, that's just something I will always be grateful for.
Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode. I love that story. And I love what you said initially when you said that adversity will kill you or reinvent you. And I think that's so true, because when we face with adversity, whether either you're going to let it get you down or you're going to figure it out like you did, how am I going to do this? Right? You figure it out and you become stronger for it.
I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah, we all
to
are.
be honest.
Yes. Yeah, I think we're all figuring it out. But I think the more and more we, as you said, I mean, these last 2 years have shown there has been a lot of adversity. There's a lot of adversity all over. But if we can either hide or we can face it. So I think that's the key. Mm-hmm. That's the key. I was interested in, because I know that you've shared or you've met a lot of interesting people in your life, and you've shared a lot of interesting stories. And maybe you could share one of the fascinating story that you remember, maybe of a woman who has reinvented herself and who's taken those adversities and changed her life.
Some of my best friends have come from jobs that I've had. And two of my very dearest are from being in radio. And one is, she's my touchstone. She's a North Star. And her name is Savvy. And her story is remarkable from every angle, from the time of her birth until now. And someday it's just a story to be told, but I will fast forward to the part where she had been in radio. She moved to San Diego from New England, became a Shakespearean actor, which is no easy feat, because she is biracial and often gets cast as like the Asian technician or the Mexican maid. I mean, just so unfair. And she has incredible acting chops. She decided a few years ago that as she said, I want to die under a snowbank in New Hampshire. So she moved back without her husband. And she said, you catch up, but I'm going out now. She enrolled in school. She's back in school. She goes to Lesley University, and she's an expressive therapies major. Wow. She's interning. She's interning with hospice patients and helping them, like, even if they can only make marks on a piece of paper, she's helping them make poems and paintings. And speaking to her and in some small way, keeping some joy in their lives by doing something that is creative and
Mm.
beautiful. And she's just one of these people who she keeps going, whatever life throws at her. She's matter of fact, she does it with grace. She has such a huge heart and she inspires me
Hmm.
all the time, even through thousands of miles of being away and sometimes years of being away. We could get into conversations like that. And for me, has just provided that touchstone of connection, that
Yeah.
miles, time, even sometimes consciousness does not separate us from the people that we love.
Yes. Yes.
But she's been able to inspire other
That's
people.
so
And I
interesting
just,
that we hear stories like that. And I often think, well, what drives people like that, right? What drives
mm,
people to, and I try to do this more and more, is to really listen to that inner voice inside of us that's telling us things. And often we ignore them. And I believe that might be, I'm not sure, but for a savvy, that might be what kind of inspired her, because to change or to do different things, it often comes from somewhere. And I think a lot of it comes internally. And I believe in that. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because I know that there's things in me that need to come out. And that's the whole part of reinvention. I think reinvention doesn't mean that you have to give up everything. It's all about really figuring out what's really inside of you and what really needs to come out. And on that story you just told, I think that's a great example of that.
I mean, someday I will introduce you to her because
Yes.
her story, her life story, I mean, she comes from so much adversity, and yet she's not somebody who complains about it.
Maybe I'll
She
have her on
just
the show.
she's an amazing woman, and I would not send you anybody that I didn't think was fabulous, and
That's
she really
amazing.
is.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So we can learn so much from other people's stories. I love it. I love it. When I was introducing you, you talk about, you have a talk. It's called "No is not a four-letter word." Can you
because
describe what that
because
means?
sometimes because sometimes we say yes and then afterwards we go,
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I mean, we think I'm going to be collegial. I'm going to be
Yes.
cooperative. I'm going to be a good person. What are people going to think if I say no? I mean,
Mm.
I was like the PTO mom, like, sure, I'll do the school fair. It's only going to take 3 months of time and coordinating all kinds of people and
Yeah.
the bake sale and the whatever. Can you mentor me? Yeah. Like, I don't have any time in the day, but sure, I'll do that for nothing. So we all do this. I don't think this is peculiar to my life. We find ourselves often saying yes to things that we don't have time for, we don't even care about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's mind-blowing about this. It's like, this is not even my thing. And why am I trying to make time for this? It doesn't even have to be a favor to somebody. We're joining something because we feel compelled to do it.
Yes. Obligated
And
almost, right? Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so what happens is we get into behaviors like, well, I don't want to be asked, so I'm just going to avoid them, or I'm just not going to answer them. I'm going to pretend I didn't see that email. And it's like, well, that is really not a way for a kind adult person to deal with that. We need to learn to be really direct in the way we say no. For example, a lot of creatives get asked to do things for nonprofits. And they'll say, well, it's a nonprofit and it will give you that good feeling. And the person who's asking is obviously making a salary. The nonprofit is making money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, so that's a false thing from many nonprofits. Happy to help. I choose the ones that I want. So my way of saying no is saying I have a policy that I don't do that.
Hmm.
Not I can't, but I don't.
Yeah.
Because when we say can't, we're like, oh, it makes it feel like I just don't, I'm not capable. And
Yes.
then we get into that whole poor me, I just can't. No, I have a policy. I don't do that. I adopt 2 organizations a year and I do something nice for them. I will speak for
Mm-hmm.
them, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you come up with as your go-to so you can gracefully get out of that, or, hey, would really like you to chair the condo board. Oh, thank you so much for asking. I'm just not able to do that today because I have other priorities with work, or I don't do that. Is there another way that I can help?
Yes.
And then find a way to
Yeah.
help people, or hey, that's great. I'm glad you thought of me. That's not something I do, but I know somebody who might be able to.
That's a great one.
So
Yeah.
there's always that
Yeah. Yeah.
that great thing, or even the way one of the things to say no to, which we're not doing a very good job of, is social media. Just say no to social media.
Yes.
We
Yeah. Yeah.
often need it for our work, right? We're trying to promote something, but a lot of it is, one of my friends says, well, I use it to say happy birthday to people. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's where they put Facebook. And I'm not slamming Facebook, but we can get into this spiral of compare and despair.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
because someone's having their best day ever when we're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
so shut it down, go read a book, listen to our podcast.
Absolutely. I love it.
Find an
Yeah.
alternative to that,
Yeah.
because we get into these spirals, and then then it's like, okay, who can I troll from my past? Oh, there's my old boyfriend. Oh, he looks
Yeah.
terrible. It just puts
Yeah.
us in this like very negative
Absolutely.
mind space too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love it when you said be direct when you say no, because it's boundaries we also place on ourselves. It's like we have to set those boundaries. And I think that as we get a little older, I think we realize more and more what we want and what we don't want. And for me, I'm learning more of that, because I used to kind of be people pleaser, and it's like, I'll do, sure. But now it's like, no, I have this, these are my priorities, and this is what I want to do. And thank you very much, but that's not going to be really fitting into my priorities. And what you said about social media as well is so important, because sometimes we want to be everywhere and be everything to everyone. It's like we have to say no to that.
Right. I mean, I don't know about you, like networking, like is all over the place.
Oh, it's
Like now
exhausting.
that it's virtual, and now I'm beginning to weed through, okay, so what are the ones that I enjoy, that I feel like there's a benefit? Because why are we networking if it's girl talk? Awesome. Let's go out and have a drink. Let's go for coffee, like whether it's virtual or not. But it's like networking, as relational as it can be, there still has to be a result, of a
Yes.
measurable result. And if there's not, like, stay in touch with those people, love those people, but that might not be the networking group for you. So
Right.
it's really like sometimes assessing, and I do morning pages. So I get
Mm.
up in the morning, and quite, it's not sort of the writing that you think of. There's nothing most mornings lofty about it. Sometimes it's more of a to-do list or a taking stock list. Like, okay, what, I haven't mastered this at all, Kavita, so don't be at all impressed. But it does give me some sort of a record of, okay, what am I paying attention to? What am I being intentional about? And what are the things that are bringing me closer to what I want to do, and not what would be nice to do?
Mm.
Because there's a lot of nice to dos.
That's
And I like
really,
the nice to
that's a nice
dos.
exercise. Yeah, I journal every morning, and I like the morning pages that you mentioned. Because it sometimes when you want to just clear the weeds in your head and get them down on paper. Right?
Oh, so
So
many weeds. What is
yeah.
it? Misplaced flowers. So
Yeah. No, my case, they're weeds. So speaking of writing, tell me about your writing, and tell me also about your podcast. It's called the Embark podcast. And for people who are interested in listening to, tell me all about it, why you started it, why you love your writing and podcasting, and
oh,
all that good stuff.
it's really all related, Kavita. I mean, the Embark podcast was my like mid-COVID project, because when it started as, oh, there's so much change going on, an unexpected change. And what does that mean? So at first it was about change. And then I really thought, I love talking to people who are innovating, creating, thinking differently, thinking things that maybe other people think, but they're expressing it where other people aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think ideas have a way of being contagious, and they're contagious without us even knowing. So people can be having the same idea without knowing it, but
Hmm.
whoever brings it forth early on, then that becomes the idea that gets followed. And
Interesting.
there's
Yeah.
something very exciting about that process. So I really do like talking to people who are in the arts or culture, writers, actors, people who are making stuff,
Makers.
innovators, scientists. We don't think of them as being creative, but they probably are the
Oh.
most creative of all of us. So I'm always fascinated by the stories of people who make it their life's work to do something that make our lives better.
Yes.
Hopefully. hopefully,
Yes. Well,
because it's
speaking of
all,
scientists, I mean, look at how much they've done in the last 2 years to make our lives better, right? Yeah.
we're on, I mean, Zoom is doing well.
Yes.
So
That's fantastic.
and it's all our on us. We did that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And how are you still doing the podcast? Are you still enjoying it?
I love it.
Yeah.
I
Good.
love it. And
Yeah.
it's that. So how do you use it? Because I'm not using it really for work. I talk for a living. So it basically proves, yeah, she talks for a living. But it's really a labor of love for me at this point. And I'm always thinking of new ways to, okay, so how do I bring the message of what I do, what's actually actionable and helpful to other people about using voice that really has nothing to do with voiceover, because I've been kind of messing around with the idea of what our voice says about us and what it cannot say,
Hmm.
because it doesn't reveal everything. And
Right.
sometimes it conceals just as much or more so than it reveals,
Hmm.
or it doesn't expose all the aspects of who we really are.
Hmm.
And I've seen that with people because of the region they come from. People will make assumptions about who you are. You're not smart, or you think you're great. And that may not be true at all. It's just a function of
Hmm.
their voice and the cadence and who they grew up around and where they grew up.
Can you
So
tell from listening to somebody's voice? Can you tell a lot about them right away? Is that something that you're like, or
not
is that
generally.
what you?
I mean, I can tell people. I grew up in Boston, so I can always tell a Bostonian because they have those, like, because we say no, we put ours where they don't belong, and
Yeah.
we take them out where they do belong. So
Right.
there's famously that Pakika or at Harvard Yard, and I can't even do it well anymore, because once you lose it, it's such a specific
Hmm.
dialect. But people like my dad's family, my husband's family is from the Bronx.
Hmm.
And so they had this like very New Yorky accent that you can
Yeah.
tell somebody is
Yeah.
from a specific place in New York. But there's also certain ways that people express, like I would say, I'm waiting in line. And someone from the Bronx would say, I was waiting online.
Okay.
And so like there's this very
Different. Yeah.
different,
It's interesting.
sometimes it's the specific vocabulary that gives people away. When I was a kid, I worked in an ice cream shop for a long time, and we had, if you made a drink for somebody and it had milk, ice cream, and syrup, we called it a frap.
Hmm.
Some people call it a milkshake. My brethren in Rhode Island call it a cabinet, which I have no idea what that means, but
Yes. Yes.
sometimes it's the real specifics. I mean, you're from Canada, but I don't notice anything particularly.
Well, I'm Canadian, but
Or,
I'm from Indian. I'm Indian origin, right? So, but I don't
right.
have any of. I don't think I have the Indian accent. I mean, I've grown up. I've been here since I was 2, but I don't. I don't. I mean, we say things in Canada like oh, like and sorry. We say sorry.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Sorry's, yeah. Sorry's a big one. Yeah.
but it's so interesting how different languages, how different cultures show up in our voices, and how we can kind of tell just from listening. So that's really neat.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
is.
Tell
Yeah.
me about your new book. You said you're writing a book.
I'm writing a book. I'm revising that book. And it really is. I'm being so perfectionist. And a few people have said, yeah, you just got to send it out there now. But it's about an unhinged young widow and her child who go to New Mexico in pursuit of a belonging of Georgia O'Keeffe's,
Oh,
and her obsession with Georgia O'Keeffe, which puts both her life and her child's life in jeopardy.
wow.
So it's about
That's interesting.
motherhood. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's, yeah,
Is
yeah.
that your first book or?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Most of the things I've written are advertising copy or
Wow.
essays,
It sounds
website
really interesting.
content. It is. I have my tribe. I have my tribe of ladies, and we have been together for 9 years now, writing short stories, going through cancer and marriages and divorces. And after a while, whatever tribe you get into, it becomes so much more than that
Yes.
sort of
Yes.
that serviceable thing that we thought we'd get into. So yeah,
Yes.
we've gone through college graduations and kids meltdowns, and
Oh yeah. You have to
yeah,
have
it's
that.
all good.
I have that too. I'm fortunate to have that. And it's just something that just warms your heart. And you know that those are the people that you can go to whenever. At any time and whenever,
Yeah,
right?
it's a little ragtag group, and
Yes.
we
Oh,
kind
good.
of all like have like it's almost like we share a brain at this point, and
Yes.
yet people will definitely get into it in terms of no, I don't think so. That's not
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
They're the people who will tell you that you have broccoli between your teeth before you
Yes.
get out and talk to somebody. So those
Well,
are
we'll
always
have
good
to have
people.
you come back when your book is published and tell us all about
Oh, from your mouth to God's ears.
it.
Yeah, that should happen.
Yes, yes. So wonderful. What else is going on? What's next for you, Liz?
What's next? I'm actually going to be hosting another podcast for a client of mine. It's a healthcare podcast, which I cannot divulge any other any other details at this point, but doing that, starting to write a series of essays that will hopefully be published in a certain
Nice,
magazine, online magazine. So,
nice.
and just keep talking. I keep
Yes.
training as we all do. I train with vocal coaches and sharpen my game. And if
Hmm.
people are looking to connect with me and want to know more about voice or voiceover, they can do that at lizsolar.com.
Absolutely. We will have all your information in our show notes for sure. And I, for one, I just somehow, I just get so attracted. I just feel like so much warmth in your voice and in your personality. That's why I just had to have you on the show. And it was just lovely to get to know you a little bit and to hear about your life and to hear about some of the stories that you've experienced. And thank you so much for sharing. Is there any last thing you'd like
No,
to say or?
Nita, the feeling is mutual. I think that we sometimes you just hit it off with people for reasons known and unknown.
Hmm.
But this has been an absolute pleasure. And I know that at some point we will be in New York with the dog, maybe
Yes,
two dogs, sipping on wine and,
absolutely. Oh, that sounds wonderful, doesn't
polishing tiaras. It would be
it?
great.
I would love that. That would be, or you can come to Toronto and we can do that.
Even better.
Yes. Thank you so much, Liz. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Kavita. It was fun.
Yeah. I trust you enjoyed my conversation with Liz Solar and it provided you with some motivation to embark on your own creative journey moving forward. Her mission is to share stories to promote understanding, empathy, and a little more conversation, and that aligns so much with mine. Here are her key takeaways. Number 1, so many things are out of our control, but those that are in our control, we should at least attempt to do. It may not be a success, but that's also a part of the process. Our character is formed by how we react when we fall. Number 2, so many of the stories we tell ourselves originate from birth or old stories. They're stories about someone else's idea of what we could or should be. There is less time to waste when we are in midlife. It becomes more important to define who we are. Number 3, we have many drafts and chapters in our lives that we are always updating. Listening to negative stories about ourselves will silo us to the point where we feel we can really only do one thing, which is totally not true. 4, we need a tribe who tells us that you've got this, your success is our success. Because if you're doing it, we know that there's a possibility for us. 5, many women do not know how to ask. We minimize our ask when people actually want to share their expertise. The ask is a really important thing. 6, there's nothing that will push you as much as adversity. Either it's going to kill you or it's going to reinvent you. 7, we often find ourselves saying yes to things that we don't have time for or even care about. We need to learn to be really direct in the way we say no. 8, ideas have a way of being contagious. People can have the same idea without knowing it. Whoever brings it forth early on, that becomes the idea that gets followed, and there's something very exciting about that process. Thank you again for being here. And as I said earlier, my mission with Power Purpose Play is to empower 1 million women in midlife worldwide to live their next stage in life to the fullest, one strong woman at a time. Will you be one of them? Take advantage of my offer to take the independent or online version of my program, It's My Time Now, free of charge. I want you to live the happiest and most fulfilled next chapter of life, so this is my gift to you. Again, All you need to do is email me at kavita@powerpurposeplay.ca with your name and why you are interested in this program, and I will send you the login details. Again, all you have to do is email me at kavita@powerpurposeplay.ca, and I will give you access to the online program, complete with eye-opening exercises, tools, and templates for you to work through at your own pace. I am excited by our mission, and I hope you are too. I don't want there to be any potential barriers in your own personal growth, so this is why I'm doing this. I hope you take advantage of this offer and also tell your friends about it. Remember, if not now, when? Until next week, my friend, be safe and be well.